Hey there, Goblins. Welcome to Goblin Salvage Rights. My name's Robert.
And I'm Erik.
And today we're talking about Edicts and Anathemas.
I'm just raising my hand periodically.
Anathemas.
Yeah. Anathemas.
Anathemas. So Alignment's dead, and Long Live Edicts and Anathemas is kind of the show today.
Yeah.
Before we jump into the topic, we got to thank our patrons for making this whole thing happen. We got a new one. He's been on Discord for quite some time. He's actually
from the beginning,
one of the first people,
Genesis levels,
whoever talked to us. Slick,
thank
you for joining the Goblin Tribe.
Mm-hmm.
We appreciate you. If you want to jump into the Discord, the link is in the doobly-doo. So just doobly down to there.
And then doodly-doo it up.
And then, of course, we have a Patreon. That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
A link to our roadmap for 2024 is in the description. Go check it out. We've got content, third-party content, and videos to go along with it planned for every month of 2024. It's going to be nuts.
Yep.
It's going to be nuts.
Now that we have the books, we can write shit again.
Yes. So we're hype, super hype. The end of 2024, December is kind of like a wrapping up of things.
Mm-hmm.
And then January, it's going to be big.
It's go time.
It's going to be big. So before we get into the topic, I would like to talk about games we played recently.
Mm-hmm.
We have played some games recently.
We have. I remember Kingmaker because it was fucking awesome.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Praise me.
You just want me to butter you up before I
praise me.
Take a shit on alignment for the next 90 minutes.
Praise me.
This last Kingmaker session, I mean, I'll try to keep this short because I honestly don't know how many people are interested and hearing about our games, but I do like talking about them.
I'm gonna put a link to like you could skip ahead. I've made it at the bottom.
Everybody does.
We've done it. I do it every time now. Okay,
but no, this past session was a great exercise, and that thing I keep harping on about, where I like my characters to feel relevant in a story. I like to feel like it just makes sense that my fighter druid character is there in the deep Fey-ridden wild, where Fey shenanigans are going on. And my character is kind of anti-Fey. And so I'm closing the gap on that relationship. I can't wait to actually meet something Fey down there. But what we did was we came across this overrun monastery.
I can't wait either,
to
Erik.
my character's deity, Aristil. And he's the god of hearth and home and hunting things and putting arrows through them, taking them home and cooking them and serving them up to your family, community, that sort of thing. And this monastery of Aristil
if you think about it, Aristil is like the all-American god. He likes hunting. He likes sports. He likes good home, hearth and home. He likes having lots of children.
Aristil.
Come and buy some guns and some bows and go hunting with your family.
Yeah.
Raise a nice family at home.
Yep. Comes home, puts a fully automatic bow and arrow on the table.
Don't need a reload action for this bad boy. Shoots 3 arrows every turn. Anyway, sorry, go on.
We should totally do like a series of bloopers where we do commercials for various gods.
That would be amazing.
Trying to bring in people into the church.
Every episode, we're gonna have an ad for a god for the next month or for the next year.
This is why people need chapter breaks in these episodes, just because this kind of stuff happens.
Absolutely.
So scoot past this.
So
anyhow, my character is a druid. He likes woodsy things, but he's also got a problem with his deity. He's been fighting with God for years because, the god of hearth and home wasn't there to protect my characters when the wife left, when my 2 daughters died to plague, when my son was kidnapped by bandits. A lot of bad shit. So I got to actually have an argument with my god after sanctifying, killing an evil demon bear that had just, shot over this whole monastery and turned it into putridness. So we got rid of the evil presence and things started to get nice almost immediately. It was like a curse was lifted and the water got pure and all that good stuff. It turned into Sleeping Beauty at the end. Mm-hmm. So it was really cool because I don't think I told the other players about my character's daddy issues with his god. So we do this epic combat where I almost died because it was almost a one-hit kill for my character and I'm the fighter. So I damn near went down immediately. We've managed to get through this horrendous combat with this insidious creature, and then this thing just finally dies on top of me. And I do my, push him over, do my Tarzan yell, And everybody's like, okay, that's well done. That's cool. What are we going to do now? We're going to go downstairs. Is there a dungeon or something?
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, wait, I'm not done. This is my moment. So my character crosses over and gets on top of the giant, 20, 30 foot tall statue of Aristotle, my own deity, climb to the top of that. And I start fighting with my god right there on the top of the monastery. And, unzip and I start peeing all over the top of the statue while I'm raging at the sky.
Our Wednesday night games are normally kind of like a little crazy. They're normally a little rowdy, little fun. We make a lot of crazy jokes. Mm-hmm. Everyone at the table was like,
what's going on here?
What's going on right now? So if you could stop our group and make them go, wait, what the fuck? You've won that night's
Was this
game.
the one joke too far moment?
No,
I don't know.
Absolutely not. It was perfectly far.
Yeah. But it was great for me because I really wanted to have that. We all came through this tremendous moment together in a cooperative game where all of our character sheets are influenced by everybody else's character sheets. And we did this great A-team experience, Ocean's 11. Everybody did their role. And we did it amazingly.
Yeah.
And we had this great moment of cheering like, yeah, we did this. But that's not what my character wanted to do. I wanted to go pick a fight with God and, pee on him while I was yelling at him. So we purified his temple while giving him the finger. And by we, I guess I mean me. So it was a really cool moment.
Everyone else just purified the temple.
I've been sitting on this moment for like 6 months or however long it's been since we started this game. And that's kind of the running through line for my character for levels 1 through 20 is I'm detangling this Gordian knot of a relationship between, my character and my deity. And it's going to manifest in ways like that.
What's so cool about that session was almost all of it was written right in the book. I didn't make
It's pretty rare when that happens. Yeah.
I didn't make any of it up.
Yeah.
The only things I really added in were the first half of the session. You guys were talking to an NPC who's going to become like a regular. And I basically I made him a little more of a knowledge repository than he's written as in the book.
I didn't know if that guy was going to stick around or not.
Yeah. And then he tipped you off about the location and it was on your way back to where you guys were planning on going anyway. So I sent you over there. And then I did pull the curtain back at the end of the session. I always ask my players like, hey, do you want me to tell you what I did differently? Do you want me to kind of tell you what I did there? And the main thing I did was double the HP of the bear creature. Yeah. Because turn one, we had 2 crits.
Immediately.
Right out
the gate.
The rogue critted and you critted, I think. And
I think I was the third.
There were 3 crits?
2 people crit and then I had the crit and hit.
No, the barbarian crit.
That's what it was.
Yeah, and when barbarians crit, they fucking slap. So my monster got their charge and a miss. And then everyone critted the fuck out of this monster.
Yeah. And then we missed almost everything after that.
But like after that, like the monster would have died.
Yeah.
It was supposed to have just died. Yeah. And to me,
that would have been anticlimactic.
So anticlimactic. So I just like doubled the HP kind of behind the screen. I didn't change anything else. Their AC and everything was the same, just twice as much HP. And I think it created an awesome
It really did
moment.
because I was afraid I was going down. Sure, there was a crit followed by a crit. And then I came in and I think I either hit and then crit or I crit and then hit and then missed. Yeah. And it was almost all misses after that. But on your side of the screen, it was like, there's not going to be anything by the time the fourth person's initiative comes around.
There's no fight here.
There's no fight here. But I was terrified because I got hit and I got taken from like 42 hit points to like 9 in one hit or one round. And I
got you with a hit. And then they have a special ability that basically does extra damage when you're grabbed. Yeah. And like, that's what I did.
And I thought I can't survive 2 of those. So this is it. Make it good.
One of the awesome things about the book is that it literally writes in that if there is a follower of Erastil at the table, like as a party member, they focus fire that person.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was like perfect. It was absolutely perfect.
See, I read that in the moment as you just being Robert, knowing that I, Erik, made a character devoted to Erastil, and it was just a natural thing. Yeah. But it was in there.
It was literally written.
And sometimes it's not. And you do that anyways. So it was, I didn't know any of that. All I knew is I was getting my ass handed to me, even though we were making these stellar moments of attacks and damage and all that. And it felt so immediate and raw and visceral that when that combat was over, it felt perfectly natural for me to go up there and pee on God's head.
Yeah, absolutely.
It didn't feel forced at all. And it was a really cool story moment, and I'm gonna remember it for years.
Yeah, for all the for all the DMs out there, I just so you know, as far as experience goes, I basically just when giving them experience, I basically made the encounter elite. So I just added a level to the monster. So it's like a CR4.
Yeah.
It just bumped up to a CR5 or whatever. Or
It's a cool
level
little
5.
trick that you have to be careful with, because I've done that kind of while not being careful.
Yeah.
And it creates awkward, like devastating moments where people are like, what the hell is this? This fight's not even possible.
Yeah. Generally speaking, if it's a one monster fight and it went way too short, you can double HP and it's not a big deal.
Sure.
If it's a multi-monster fight, do not change HPs.
That's when it's tricky. Yeah.
Because action economy the game actually begins to play like it's supposed to with a bunch of action economies playing against each other.
Sure. Yeah.
So yeah, that was our game. I think between then and there, we haven't played another game.
We haven't done Edgewatch in like a month, so I've got no stories
we're playing
there.
it this weekend.
We are, yeah. And hopefully this is like the boss battler session.
Eric just did a really cool idea, which was like a Secret Santa, where basically all the players got a Secret Santa of other players at the table, and we got to give them a 250 gold piece item. And if it's common, we just give it to them. We don't have to do anything else. If it's uncommon, we have to give him an NPC to play with that gives them the item or they get the item from. And then if it's rare, you have to give them an NPC and a location of where the thing happens. So it's basically like, hey,
help me do some world building.
Write my scenes for me, DM for me, do my prep, and you can up the rarity, which I think is the perfect amount of carrot for those levels.
I'm hoping so. Yeah. I wasn't sure how the numbers were going to work out, but it was a really cool exercise because I had realized one day last week that, oh my God, we've skipped sessions enough. So there's like a month between our sessions. We did that twice in the span of like 3 months. And I'm like, well, what can I do to keep everybody interested and wanting to come back and not make it feel like it's been years since we played? So this Secret Santa thing doesn't even have to be like a December thing. You can just do that as long as it doesn't break the game balance and all that other crap.
And of course, I picked the rare one for my Secret Santa because I'm like, of course, dude. There's so many cool rare fucking weapons.
Yeah,
why wouldn't I pick this?
Yep. Yeah, and, rare but not unique, I think was the final criteria.
Yeah, and I had a really good time. I basically spent my whole car ride.
I know you would. Yeah,
just writing it. Well, I was a passenger. I wasn't driving and writing this backstory at the same time.
Excuse me, officer. Can you please shut up? I'm trying to find a rare item.
Yeah. Sweet. So let's jump finally into the topic.
What are we here for again?
Pathfinder Remastered has done a lot of things to the game. I would argue that the changes to the game are not as substantial as a lot of people think at first glance. One of the most substantial changes is alignment is gone.
Yes.
So Pathfinder Remastered got rid of alignment.
I think that is one of the most substantial changes that changes almost nothing.
That's the thing. It's, whoa, alignment's gone. That's crazy. Oh, you're going to have to change.
But what does it really do?
We're going to change all these classes. Well, no, not really, because the gods already had edicts and anathemas that you had to have been following on top of your alignment or whatever. And all that's really changed is we've like got rid of positive and negative and replaced it with like vitality and void, and now we're done.
Sure. And then sanctification's the other part.
Yeah, and like they didn't
outside of that.
They honestly didn't even need to do sanctification.
The jury's still out on that one for me because there's still some stuff coming up in Player Core 2 I have questions about.
Oh yeah, that's fair.
But yeah, at the end of the day, alignment's a big thing. We all know it. Those of us who played multiple editions of this game, and it's always there, whether we love it or hate it. Most of us hate it. But what purpose did it serve? How did it enhance the game? How did it provide clarity where otherwise there would be opacity?
It often acted as a shorthand for us as players and DMs to describe who this person was in 2 syllables. Lawful good.
Sure.
Lawful evil. Lawful neutral.
Right.
Chaotic, whatever.
You have 9 moral and ethical ways to be.
Right.
And that is it.
That's it. And as a very, if we only used it as an incredibly surface level shorthand that we then dug deeper into, it probably would have been fine in a lot of ways. Yeah. But it never was that.
No.
It created arguments and all of these bad feelings like, oh, I'm a lawful good paladin. You know, what do lawful good paladins do? Everyone at the table has 5 different opinions. You know, if there's 4 people at the table, there are 5 different opinions about what a lawful good paladin is.
Right. And it almost always, in my experience, came down to somebody trying to use the ends to justify the means and saying, of course, I can solve trolley problems with my lawful good alignment. Here's how many children have to die. It was just not useful or productive for me. As a shorthand from a 30,000 foot view in the sky, yeah, sure, it was great. But when we're sitting there playing at the table, I need alignment to serve a stronger purpose. What does it do? So that's part of the conversation I want to have. What I don't want to do is have sort of like a conversation where it's like, yeah, this is why alignment is better than the Edicts and Anathemas. And this is how Edicts and Anathemas are better than alignment. I don't care because I think it's almost apples and oranges at this point.
I don't care because we never used it anyway. I mean,
I think E&As are much more targeted approach to a moral and ethical and a personal code of conduct for your characters, your monsters, your organizations, your global societies. You know, the Illuminati has Edicts and Anathemas.
Absolutely.
We could call them neutral evil or lawful neutral, and that really doesn't say anything about how to guide role-playing experiences with them in a scene. But by targeting 3 specific edicts and 2 specific anathema, you better believe you have some really specific interactions there at the table. So I think it's that specificity I really want to hone in on for the next hour and a half we're talking about.
Absolutely. So let's define what an edict and anathema is for everyone at home. I think we all know what an alignment is, but a lot of people may not know like what an edict or anathema is. So let's just describe that.
Sure. Just defining our terms. I pulled this off the internet, so bear with me here. Let's see. What do we have? Edicts and anathema. An edict is a decree, an order, or an ordinance issued by a sovereign, a state, or any other holder of authority. Any formal or authoritative command or proclamation. This is what an edict is. An edict is a moral or ethical code that comes from without, more often than not. It comes from up on high. You have a code of ethics from the American Medical Association if you're a doctor. You know, they give you edicts that guide your behavior, and then you take actions based on that. What is an anathema? Anathema is the other guy. It's defined as one that is cursed by ecclesiastical authority, someone or something intensely disliked or loathed. It's a ban or a curse solemnly pronounced by ecclesiastical authority and accompanied by excommunication, presumably from a church. So anathema essentially means these are the rules we agreed to abide by, and you broke them, so you get kicked out.
An edict is a thing you try to uphold in the world. An anathema is a thing you abhor in the world. So I personally have an edict personally of I don't steal anything. It's actually kind of like a little joke I have. I am many things, but not a thief.
Right.
It's just something I've never done. It's always disgusted me, and I do my best not to do it.
Sure.
That's an edict of mine. Don't steal. You could also argue that I have an anathema of stealing, right?
You also have an anathema for paying for electronic products from old Paizo titles. So grain of salt.
Yeah. And this is one of those.
And we're back in alignment territory.
Exactly. And this is one of those things where it's like, yeah, I don't steal any goods that I don't think are not infinitely reproducible. There can,
and we start qualifying things,
exactly,
right? Which is what every alignment conversation devolves into.
But the edicts and anathemas will always probably devolve into that too, and that's okay. The qualifiers and asterisks are what make us interesting as individuals. It's what makes us interesting as people. It's what makes us deep.
Sure.
So I don't want to jump into that now because that's
sure, right,
a different section of the video. But to define our terms, it's a thing you uphold and then a thing you abhor.
Right.
A thing you try to make.
I'm going to go even more specific. It's a code that you follow.
Sure.
Whether it comes from within or without. And I think there's going to be a lot of both in this conversation coming up.
Absolutely.
Anathemas are kind of the same thing. Another thing I want to say about anathema, and this is why I really like it. It doesn't say this in the books, but this is how I read it. And I think it's supported by certain things like devils and demons and outer planar creatures. I feel like an anathema isn't simply something you have a distaste for. You know, I just don't like people who steal, to use your example.
Sure.
I don't want to be that person. Stealing's distasteful to me. That's not an anathema. If you steal a whatchamacallit bar from your local 7-Eleven, you go home and you throw up because you feel so overwhelmed with all of it, of that experience that you're processing in that moment. It's almost like physical trauma. So like if you're a doctor and you take advantage of one of your patients and that's your anathema, you throw up when you're done. You have a visceral reaction. It's anathema to you. It's not simply like, I don't believe in stealing, so I don't steal. It's like, blah,
Right.
I can't handle this thing I just did.
Interesting.
So I think that's a useful lens with which to read all of this stuff on
the
Edicts and
severity
Anathemas for
of
me.
your reaction internally to your deeds must be extreme for it to be anathema.
And I think that'll be even more useful when we talk to quote unquote evil NPCs and monsters that have anathemas as well. Like, where are their lines in the sand that they don't cross?
Right.
And I've got some examples for later on. But I really want to drill down that edicts, I feel, are sort of codes of conduct from within and without, as well as being a code of conduct that is idiosyncratic to yourself, regardless of what organization you're a part of. And anathemas are a visceral reaction to a mode of behavior. It just turns you off to the point where you upchuck.
Right. I think that's a really good litmus test.
Yeah. You don't get that in, well, I'm lawful evil. Well, I'm neutral evil. Well, I'm chaotic good.
So let's get into that then. So let's get into what alignment is, or what alignment was, right? Alignment was fundamentally a spectrum, two spectrums actually, that people fell upon. One was law and evil. Sorry, one was law and chaos.
Yeah.
One was law and chaos. And the way I always understood it was, how willing are you to regularly follow the will of the land? You know, where on the spectrum did you fall? And unfortunately, it was less of a spectrum and more of a set of three binary choices. I guess it's a trinary. You either were lawful, meaning you always follow the law of the land. You were neutral, which meant you sometimes did, you sometimes didn't. Or you were chaotic in that you almost never followed the law of the land, which is so far outside of reality. It's hilarious and kind of preposterous.
It is, because there are bad laws.
Yeah.
So if you are a lawful good character and the prevailing law of your land is that anybody under the age of 18 is imprisoned by the state and you are freed upon your 18th birthday, that's not a good law. That's an evil law. That's an oppressive law. But if you're a lawful good character, according to that definition you gave, you have to follow it. And you do it because you're lawful. You're not chaotic good. You're lawful good.
Or at least you have to put up with it while in someone else's land.
Yeah. One of the ways the law chaos thing was explained to me, and I really, really liked it. Couldn't tell you who did it, but it was years ago. It's less about following the laws of the land and more about orderly versus disorderly approaches to life in general. You know, if your head is a mess and you act on impulse more often than not, you're probably not lawful. You're probably more chaotic.
It reminds me of like
spreadsheet brain and things are just so and everything has its place. Whether you're good or evil, you're probably lawful.
It's almost like the difference between individualism, chaos, and collectivism, lawfulness.
Sure, until there's always an exception to everything.
Right,
come
exactly.
So you get to certain libertarian points of view, and that is flipped. It's completely lawful and it's completely individualistic, like hyperly so, and it's completely evil. But I'm not going to go there. It's messy. Alignment just didn't work because, like you said, you get 4 people, you get 5 opinions. So how do we make use out of it? Well, we don't anymore, so we don't have to.
yeah, we definitely don't.
But the idea of law and chaos and good and evil being the X and Y axis with which to say, this is how my character thinks and behaves, and this is sort of a rough guideline. You know, my signposts on the freeway as I'm driving to San Francisco, 486 miles to go. That doesn't tell me what cities are between here and there. That doesn't tell me what the pit stops are. Where's my last rest stop? Where can I eat? All the information that really tells you what the trip is like isn't there. You just have the little number, San Francisco, 286 miles.
Right.
You have character X, lawful evil, whatever that means. It's not specific. It's opaque. It's general. It's only useful as an inaccurate shorthand. And
that we loved.
That we loved. It was a sacred cow. It really was. And it still is to a lot of people. So again, I don't want to shit on this for another 90 minutes. What I want to do is drive home my opinion that alignment was general, alignment was vague, alignment was non-specific. Edicts. There's a lot of syllables in that word. Edicts and Anathemas It's not edicts because that's a dick pic. Edicts is the thing we're talking about here. I'm just gonna call them E&As from here on out.
Edicts.
Yeah.
Got it.
Right,
got it.
right.
Got it. Got it.
I'm glad you're going with me on that one.
Gotcha.
But edicts and anathemas, they're specific. They're targeted. They're black and white. They have parameters. It's not difficult to understand. You don't have 4 people and 5 opinions on what an edict means, what an anathema means. And that level of specificity in a rules-heavy game, I think will only help it. And even if you take that 30,000-foot view, it's still useful. And it not only applies to individual characters, but also you can use it for organizations, religions, deities, worshipers. You can use it for monsters. You can even use it for like the corner store, the local butchery, regardless of who's in it. If they're serving up orc meat and the whole thing is cannibalistic, that says something without even talking about the people who are either working there, shopping there, or sourcing, that locally free-range orc. You can use edicts and anathemas for buildings, and they haven't done so yet. But I think that's the design space that they're allowing for.
Absolutely,
and
absolutely.
Who knows where you go from there.
Yeah, you could even give it to like mundane items in some cases.
Yeah. An intelligent item with edicts and anathemas. I didn't even think about that.
That's
the obvious one.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, we now have our definitions to work with: edicts and anathemas. We know they're specific, they're targeted. And how, of what use are they if you're not playing a cleric, if you're not playing a divine character? Who really needs to have edicts and anathemas on their character sheet?
I think anyone, actually. Any person. I think if you ask any person and you talk to them long enough, you'll end up discovering whatever edicts and anathemas they have as individuals. And a lot of them, a lot of their anathemas should not be surprising. A lot of their edicts probably won't be surprising. Because a lot of our edicts in society, especially in Western society, are all pretty much aligned in a lot of ways. Well, actually, I wouldn't say just in Western society. Every society you could argue societies are almost literally just a series of commonly accepted edicts and anathemas.
Sure.
And what makes them interesting is where you as an individual add on extra edicts or remove edicts from that nomenclature.
Yep, we're definitely going to get to that. Yeah, I'm going to have a 3-pronged argument. There's edicts and anathemas serve a moral purpose, an ethical purpose.
We're here already.
I mean, idiosyncratic
what we're talking
purpose.
about. You know what I mean? So fundamentally, when it comes to like building and playing a character, I think that picking like 3 of each is a really easy and simple way to give some really short but easy, like when I say short, I mean like quick but easy guidelines, some guardrails for your character.
Sure.
A lot of times we make these cool characters and we really don't know how they would act. So they act like we do in real life when we're bored. And we're basically just role playing ourselves at the table a lot of times.
Yeah.
It's fun to give ourselves edicts and anathemas that maybe we don't hold personally. I think that's probably a good place for a lot of people to start. Like what's an edict that Robert doesn't personally have that I can give my character. Yeah. And then when I go to role play it and I'm thinking to myself, I'm having fun at this role playing scenario, but everyone else is talking. Or like maybe I'm being put on the spot. What should I say? What should I do? Where should I even start?
How would my character behave?
How would my character behave in this situation? I don't even know how I would behave personally in this situation. Right. How would my character behave? Well, let's see here. My character sheet I wrote at the beginning, I do X, Y, and Z, and I don't do, A, B, and C. Okay, cool. So let's start from there. Does a current social situation fall into any of these specific parameters? Oh, look, they do kind of generally, or maybe tangentially. I'm going to lean on that. Sure. And that's what I'm going to focus on in this social encounter.
So if you had, in the old days, before remastered, if you had 5 lawful neutral characters, okay, give me an idea of how you think a lawful neutral character would behave, just off the top of your head. What are some lawful neutral modes of behavior, actions, thoughts?
I've been playing
Or you can pick another alignment.
I've been playing Pathfinder for so long, my mind obviously immediately goes to Abadar.
Sure, lawful neutral, god of civilization, banks, and getting cities into the forests.
Yeah. So it's like, I'm a boring banker. Okay. If anything, if I remember correctly, they kind of described, I think it was the 3.5 book when they talked about alignment. They described a warlord or like like samurai or some sort of warrior who lives by their own code of honor and ethics.
Sure.
And never breaks that code at all. It's almost as if they had they had a lot of hard-coded edicts and anathemas and they never strayed from them.
Right.
That suggests in that system that someone who was chaotic neutral didn't really have any edicts or anathemas, or very few, and they were very whimsy or, easy with the ones they did have.
Sure.
So to answer your question, if I had 4 or 5 lawful neutral characters, because my brain only has like 1 or 2 ideas of who a lawful neutral character looks like, I would probably only play one of those 2 characters, even though there's only 5
And
options.
if you made 100 characters and they were all lawful neutral, you probably play 100 characters 1 or 2 different ways. Because that's the vagueness of alignment. But if I were to say to you that one of your 100 characters believes that bringing civilization to the frontiers, that's a virtue. If your second character says, the most important thing to me is that we follow the rule of law. Good, evil, indifferent, just follow the rule of law. That's priority number 1. And your third lawful neutral character says, no, you guys aren't doing lawful neutral right. It's actually, you have to earn wealth through hard work and trade. That should be your primary focus. And you had 3 lawful neutral characters going, well, actually, this is how you play lawful neutral.
Yeah.
And of course, all of us armchair theologian quarterbacks at the table love to tell each other how wrong they are and how they're interpreting the alignments. But this is super specific. And now instead of having 100 lawful neutral characters playing the exact same way, and I play with you for 10 years and you're doing one thing over and over and over, because these are the tools you have to work with.
Right.
That's in the past. We have better tools now. And if we don't use our more advanced tools to, solve specific problems, then what are we doing? So that's kind of cool.
And I want to stress when Erik says advanced, I don't want anyone to be scared of edicts and anathemas.
This isn't calculus.
It's like literally the difference between like adding and subtracting and multiplying. It's just a logical extension. It's the next step forward.
And we already do it anyways. We just don't have the language for it.
Exactly.
So like another deity, I won't give the alignment. Pursue your personal freedom. Seek hedonistic thrills. Take revenge. These are stupid, simple concepts. You could just Google and say, hey, give me 10 moral codes for somebody who likes to run over kittens with their trucks.
Instead of doing that, you could check the description of our video where we linked. I created a short list of edicts and anathemas that is literally just the core deities, edicts and anathemas, written in a list.
It's an amazing place to start for this. Yeah, 100%.
If you're, I would like to make one that's a lot more substantial. That's a lot more interesting. That's not just like ripped off of the, my own creations, if anything. But even if I don't do that, even if we don't get around to making that, this is a good enough place to start for a lot of players.
Yeah.
You
can get years of use out of this.
Roll some dice and just randomly determine, number 32. That's one of my edicts. Done.
Yep.
And why is
you get weird combinations that way that you kind of have to think through what it takes to make those logical conclusions for this character.
That's the thing. Like I thought about this idea of backing into when basically doing the research for this video, I came up with this idea of backing into a character where instead of, and you know me, I love creating things inside of constraints. It's like the way my mind flourishes. So roll your random things, and some of them could be contradictory, and that's good because if they are,
because this isn't alignment.
Yeah, if they're contradictory, that's good because that'll probably make you seem a lot more real and deep as a person. Because we have, just as Erik pointed out about the stealing thing earlier, we have weird and often contradictory beliefs and understandings about how the world works.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So I'm gonna, while you're talking, I'm gonna randomly generate some edicts and anathemas.
Yeah.
And then as we go through it, I'm gonna come up with reasons from this character's childhood or whatever as to why they have those edicts and anathemas.
I'm ready for you. You ready?
The next step after randomly choosing these edicts and anathemas, these E&As, is to give reasons in your backstory as to why they have those experiences. It could be as simple as, well, my dad was a lawyer and
Yeah, it doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be
My
deep.
dad was a lawyer. I was brought up as a lawyer. I think the law is really important.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, let's try. This is a fun game. I want to see how this works out. So I'm going to pick 3 edicts and 1 anathema. Okay. And you're going to talk briefly about how somebody's backstory who has these. Is that what I heard?
I was going to randomly generate them off the list, but do it.
Okay.
Let's do it.
So edict number 1, your character, a fighter.
Sure.
Your character believes that it is critically important to earn wealth through hard work and trade.
Earn wealth.
Edict number 1.
Okay.
Your character also believes that it is a moral imperative to negotiate contracts to your best advantage.
Mm-hmm.
Your character also has the edict that believes it is critically important to aid the oppressed.
Okay, cool.
So I picked 3 edicts, one from a good god, one from a neutral god, and one from an evil god. Our third item is going to be an anathema. And this anathema is destroy undead.
Okay, cool.
That's from the undead neutral evil deity. So we have a lawful evil, a neutral evil, a lawful neutral, and a chaotic good that I've drawn from. Go.
So my character cares about earning wealth, negotiating contracts, aiding the oppressed, while also has an anathema for destroying undead. So the first place my mind goes, I've got a map right in front of me. My character is from Geb.
Yep.
They were born and raised in Geb. And because of that, they naturally abhor destroying undead. They were raised around undead. Undead are normalized to them. Some of their best friends, some of their greatest mentors. Maybe a mentor NPC I hand my DM is an undead. Not all undead are bad. They might have been created
Some of
through.
my best friends are undead.
Exactly. So they might have been created through necromancy, but it doesn't necessarily mean they're naturally evil. Aid the oppressed. Well, even though I was born in Geb, they employ a bunch of undead workers who are mindless automatons, but they also regularly trade in slavery. And my upbringing was that of my father was not from Geb. We immigrated because he's a merchant, and our family's culture is from a place that abhors slavery and oppressing people's freedoms. So just because I grew up and mainly grew up in a country, I hold on to my family's mercantile belief that everyone deserves their chance at mercantilism and freedom. That leads me to my other edict: earn wealth and negotiating contracts. So my family is very wealthy for a mercantile family, and I was raised to know contracts and earn money through good negotiation and good capitalism. Right? So I've got a mercantile family.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't always the sharpest tool in the shed, but I knew how to wield a sharp tool. So I became my family's de facto head guard for our trade ships for a long time. So I'm from a mercantile family that empowered me with the belief that I can trade, that I can make trades and create wealth that's good for both parties. Mm-hmm. I do that by always negotiating contracts and make sure everyone upholds their side of a contract, because the only thing that keeps us above animals in this world is our minds and our contracts, the things we say we're going to do. And I care a lot about aiding the oppressed, especially in my home country of Geb, because we have so many undead, mindless undead to work for us. There's absolutely no need for us to ever have slavery or indentured servitude. And finally, my anathema is to destroy undead, because just because you're undead doesn't necessarily mean that you're a bad person or that you're evil or some nonsense like that, some nonsense morality like that. Undead are just intelligent beings. Intelligent undead, especially, are just beings like everyone else.
So, what's your visceral reaction when you see somebody defiling an undead? It's an anathema. So it's an anathema. So it's this really strong reaction. It's not a distaste for the destruction of undead. It's anathema to you.
Mm-hmm.
What happened to your character that made that be your anathema instead of pushing old ladies into the street?
I was traveling abroad, studying abroad, and with my mentor, who was a well-known, intelligent skeleton warrior. He had thousands, literal thousands of years of martial experience in that old bony noggin of his, you know. And one day we had the unfortunate circumstance to intersect with a Iamadean crusade force who were blinded by their faith and destroyed my mentor, one of the people who taught me everything I knew about the sword. And that was the triggering moment where now I have every time I see undead destroyed, I think of the mindless destruction of ancient wisdom and one of my best friends at the hands of these ridiculous zealots who never asked any questions. They just pointed their sword first.
But Robert, this is so complicated. What's your alignment?
Exactly. It's like probably if I were to give an alignment to this person, probably lawful neutral.
And you can.
Lawful good, maybe.
Every character sheet can have Edicts and Anathemas, and you can slip in a CE or an LG or an NE somewhere on your...
You could even argue that this character could be lawful evil.
It could be any of the 9 alignments.
Yeah, absolutely.
8 alignments, because true neutral is stupid and doesn't exist. But yeah, so I want to dig in on something specific that you just did, and I don't know if you were intending to do it or if you did it as a reaction to me pushing, but you gave me like half a dozen NPCs.
Yeah, I didn't.
While
do
you were
that
talking about your character,
it just comes naturally.
It comes naturally. Yeah,
when you tell stories, you create people. People are part of stories.
Right. Yeah, they're details that make the world feel lived in, and that's what this does in ways that alignment just never did.
Exactly.
So, again, I want to tell you what we just did. You guys can do this with a 100-sided die and just roll it. Grab 3 edicts from different sources. An evil edict, a good edict, a neutral edict.
We've got a list in the description. It's going to be a wiki from our Notion page. You can take a 2d10, roll. If you get anything higher than the number that's on the list, roll again.
Yep.
Randomly determine your edicts and anathemas. And then as an exercise, just create a story and a reason for each of them.
Yeah. What I'm going to do for my own characters going forward, because I feel like this conversation started here, not today, but like when this book came out.
Right.
And then as we talk about edicts and anathemas, I keep trying to find more useful ways to use them.
Right.
And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick 3 edicts and 1 anathema minimum for all my characters. Edict number 1 is going to be a moral edict.
Okay.
Number 2 is an ethical edict. And number 3 is a, you roofed me again, didn't you?
Oh my God. This is some what we call bottler's hooch. It's basically when we have to clean the lines out between bottles, we pull old booze through a line into a bottle and we take it home.
Yeah. And give it to your alcoholic friends.
Yes. Bottler's hooch.
We're not discriminating around here.
So you're saying?
And the third one is an idiosyncratic personal code of conduct. So ethics come from without. American Medical Association, when you get your law degree, you have to abide by a code of ethics that are not your own. You promise to do that. That's your ethical alignment, if you want to call it that. Your moral alignment is something you're most likely you've been raised around. It's a community thing, social mores, social norms, that sort of thing.
Okay.
They're personal to you and they're your beliefs. And these are the kind of things when you start talking with rational people out there in the world, they give you space. They're like, okay, I understand this is important to you. It's not for me, but that's okay. We're talking about you right now. So you get some leeway with that sort of thing. Your individual idiosyncratic, I'm going to call it, personal beliefs, that's you. So you can have a contract devil that has the ethical belief, I need to make sure my contracts are ironclad and I'm going to punish the shit out of anybody who's in breach of contract. That's the contract devil's ethical edict. A moral edict can be something like, in my part of hell where I came up, we had a particular joy from torturing kittens, just to pick an example. That's not an ethical thing. That's a moral thing.
Edict. Fuck kittens.
Yeah. I mean, anathemas don't have to mean all bad.
Yeah.
It just means what is repellent to you. Edicts doesn't mean have to mean all good. That's just your ethical, moral, and personal code of conduct that you engage in. And your idiosyncratic, your personal code of conduct is one where, like, if all 5 of us characters at the table were chaotic good, this one is, for me, it's irrespective of my CG alignment. And that might be something like, I feel like it's wrong to live past the age of 30. If you're not dead by 30, you haven't chased your legend. You haven't even tried. If you make it to 30 and you still have all your teeth, you're not doing it right. That's my edict. That's my idiosyncratic personal manifesto.
Interesting. Okay,
so a moral, an ethical, and a personal code of conduct. 3 different codes of conduct. And then an anathema that makes my stomach churn whenever I encounter that kind of behavior or thought in the world. That's the anathema. All of my characters going forward are going to have that formula. And that makes these different deities, Rovagug, Torag, Sarenrae, Urgathoa, Asmodeus,
actually useful.
That makes them more interesting to me when I think of, let's look at the devil lord of contracts who was here almost when the universe began. And what are his edicts? And are these moral or ethical? Are they idiosyncratic to him? Let's take a look. We've got negotiate contracts to your best advantage. That's lawyer speak. That could be any devil. That probably is any devil. In fact, that's probably just the party line when you're a devil.
Yeah.
Is that an intrinsic thing? No, because there are devils who don't give a shit about contracts. But Asmodean devils, they do. So that's kind of like the what I call the ethical edict. Rule tyrannically and torture weaker beings. There's not a devil anywhere in the outer planes that doesn't subscribe to that. That's what they do. That's part of who they are, their metaphysical makeup, if you will. That's their moral alignment, I would argue. And his third one is show subservience to your betters. That's idiosyncratic. You have contract devils that do one or the other. You'll have your lemurs, your bottom of the food chain devils that believe both. But this one right here, Asmodeus says, this is one of the 3. If you're in my church, you do this.
What does he say? What was the last one?
The last one was edicts, blah, blah, blah. Oh, God damn it. Where are you? Show subservience to your betters.
What's ironic is he doesn't have any betters, so he never has to follow that himself.
But everybody else does,
yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Yeah, and then his...
and that's like the most Asmodean shit you've ever heard, you know what I mean?
feel like that's an idiosyncratic him thing that he's imposing on others.
Absolutely.
Which makes it fascinating to me as opposed to, yeah, I'm lawful evil. You know what that means, right? We all do.
Go
all
read
of us
the
at the
book.
table. Yeah, right.
Yeah, every lawful evil guy is basically the devil.
Sure.
Literally.
Anathema for Asmodeus. Again, the contract devil of devils. Break a contract. Share power with the weak. Insult Asmodeus by showing mercy to your enemies. Okay, they're all anathemas. But which one's personal? Which one's moral? Which one's ethical? That's fucking fascinating.
Personal
to me.
is definitely show mercy to your enemies.
Yeah,
That's
for
definitely
sure. And
he got burned years ago, and he's like, never again.
And when my character showed up to your game last Wednesday and he purified a monastery devoted to his deity, presumably that's a noble, good thing, right?
Right.
He immediately pissed on his god's head at the end of that. That was
mean?
personal. That was idiosyncratic. That was my personal belief structure. My ethics said, we've got to fix this, guys. This needs to be purified. We can't let this demonic presence do this. So let's knock it out, get some experience points, and then and give me a few minutes to do what needs to be done, because I got something I got to do.
What needs to be done?
I got to talk to a guy about a thing.
Needs to be done.
I never had these wonderful moments of, so that's what my character would do when I had alignment. There was no guidance for that conversation, for that sort of character building. And everything we've just talked about, me, because I'm running off at the mouth, is has been restricted to player characters. You can do this for buildings, organizations, religions. You can do it for the NPC that shows up selling Bibles at your character's front door. You can do it for your dog.
The most exciting thing to me is probably organizations, because they often feel like a monolith that it's hard to understand. And if they have a few very certain goals, like when someone is a part of an organization, the organization may have these edicts and anathemas, and you can assume that the person in an organization very likely has all of the edicts and all of the anathemas.
Sure.
But
Certainly
maybe-
from a ethical point of view.
Yeah.
100%.
But maybe they don't.
Mhm.
Maybe the one you're talking to right now has an anathema that contradicts and cancels out one of the edicts
Yes.
in this organization.
Mhm.
And that's your in guy to get into the secret society or to infiltrate this god's, theocracy or something like that.
Sure. And let's to continue down that train of thought, let's pretend we're in Chiliax. It's a government
Sure.
modeling itself after hell and contracts and infernal, and everybody's dressed in red and flames and all that. So if you have 46 different temples to Asmodeus sprinkled around the map, and your players go to visit 5 of them, how do you differentiate them one from the other? Well, how about Temple 1 says, okay, look, we all know what it means to be an Asmodean, but I'm going to tell you what it really means. You need to rule tyrannically and torture weaker beings. Yes, contracts are important. Yes, you need to show subservience to your betters. But if you had to pick one of the 3, I need you people to dig down on this one edict. And every time you go to a new Asmodean temple or interact with the new worshiper of Asmodeus, people are valuing different things with different intensities. And it creates a more lived-in, believable world where people believe the same things, but with different intensities. Or believe opposite things.
It's like, those guys in Beaverton are assholes. You know what I mean?
And that's true.
But like the Gresham guys, they're just a bunch of stingy bastards, and all they do is care about the contract.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's what kind of can create regionality in the ideas of your in the world of your game. It
differentiates experiences, and it makes it so you're not playing the same fucking game every week.
Yeah, totally.
In this context.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just stupid excited, and I can talk for hours on this sort of thing. So what is the TLDR of everything we just said? Edicts and Anathemas are not alignment.
No.
But they are more advanced tools to solve problems that alignment could never solve but tried to.
Mm-hmm.
And they also sharpen the lines of the world that we're trying to experience. It broadens the color palette of the world we're trying to experience. It differentiates deceptively similar interactions and makes them unique one by one if you place the importance of value on specific edicts and anathemas over others. And
I'd like to add E&As make alignment actionable.
Yes.
In a way that it never was before. And I think that's, to me, the biggest takeaway from Edicts and Anathemas, E&As, is that at the end of the day, I don't have to guess what my character thinks about a thing.
Right.
I can look at my character sheet and be like, well, this guy fucking hates this. Right. So I'm probably going to do everything in my power to not make whatever's happening happen. Because, my anathema is indentured servitude and slavery, and this motherfucker is,
I got indentured servants, and I brought them because they're on my character sheet.
Or like, my anathema is undead, and I'm sorry that your mentor that you have a lot of great experiences with is an undead guy, but he's got to die.
Yeah. Again.
Sorry. Again.
Yeah. And that brings up another interesting thing. Like when you're playing in a game and you're playing a chaotic good character and I'm playing a lawful neutral character, and this guy, we have like 4 different alignments among 5 different players. None of that mattered.
So here's an interesting question, Eric, because I think we have some time. What happens in a party where someone's edict and another one's anathema collide? How do you handle that situation?
Well,
if someone has a edict of destroy undead and another person has an anathema of destroy undead, what the fuck?
I have 2 answers for that. One is if I'm a player and I have to respond to that. First thing I got to do is realize that this is our game, not my game. So I got to take a breath and go, okay, I don't want this to be disruptive and unfun. So how can I take this amazing conflict that just introduced itself and get everybody's dopamine hit done during this conflict? So how do I make this fun and interesting for everybody? And then I proceed down that way. If I'm a GM and I see that coming because I'm a responsible GM and I've read everybody's edicts and anathemas and I've accounted for them and I've woven them into my stories so they trigger.
Reading players' character sheets. Yes.
Pro tip, right?
Pro tip.
How about baseline tip? So as a GM, I personally would see them coming because it's important to me to see it coming. Other GMs just might not give a shit and they'll be like, oh no, we've tripped into this explosive situation.
As a good GM, you probably planted an undead character
Sure.
for them to trip over.
Yeah. So I think
maybe in a morally interesting way.
Yeah.
Where it is.
As a GM, if I did exactly what you're describing, my purpose for that is to draw you out and give you a moment to like have a really lived in experience with your character.
Yeah.
Whoa, indentured servitude. We got pros and cons in the same party. I need to craft that scene in a way where it doesn't tank everybody's fun and make people have a feel bad moment.
You're responsible for that experience.
Yeah, because inevitably somebody has to lose that interaction. And as a GM, I got to make you both feel like you won, even though one character didn't get what they wanted in that moment.
That's a really
and
good
that's
way to put
hard. It's a difficult thing. It requires trust. It requires a shared vulnerability. It requires everybody to be like, this is our story, not just my story, not just your story, not just the GM's story. And that's what I try to lead with, and I don't always do it well. But when you have conflict, everybody needs to be able to recognize that that's what it is, and recognize that this could be really cool if we're not dicks about it. So.
This could be really cool if we're not dicks about it. That's the
How's
really
that for
important.
an edict? Be cool and don't be a dick about it.
It's important though. Like, you know, if you have these edicts that are so important to each player should probably know, like, we should all get together and be like, hey guys, these are my E&As. Let's all have a good idea of what they are.
Sure.
So that we can responsibly step on each other's toes.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways.
Right.
Like, ask your other players, hey, do you want conflict from your E&As? Is that something you want as a DM and as another player? Like, as a DM, but especially as another player, because a lot of players love that juicy gossip, that juicy interaction with each other, where it's like, I think we should do A, I think we should do B, let's argue about it, have this like in character tension moment, and then it gets relieved. Some people
shrinking violets. They're the other way.
Want to never have that experience.
It's uncomfortable. I don't want to fight with my friend.
Yeah.
You're not fighting with your friend. We're creating a moment together.
But they may feel that way.
Fight with my friend.
You know, they may legitimately feel that way. They might
and
have
that's
like
a session zero thing, I think.
Yeah. And they might have some social anxiety that they're trying to ease their way into, maybe, or something like that.
Sure.
At the end of the day, what I want you goblins to focus on is other people. I want you to consciously ask yourself when you're starting a game, or maybe when you're just going to your game next week, how can I make my other players, as a player and as a DM, but especially as a player, how can I make my other players have a better experience?
Yeah.
What can I do to enrich?
How can you make Eric's
game?
day? That's the question everybody should be asking.
Because if everyone comes to the table trying to make everyone else have a great time, even as a player, everyone is going to have an amazing
See, the thing
time.
about, what's that expression? Rising tides lift all boats, is we are the tide. All of us together are the tide.
And the boats.
And the boats,
yes,
right.
Exactly.
Yeah, maybe our characters are the boats and we the people are the tide. I don't know. I'll have to think on that.
Yeah.
But something else I just thought of in this moment to further increase the specificity and actionability of E&As.
Fucking, I don't know English.
Is I feel like for my characters and as a GM for my NPCs and Buildings and Monsters, the intensity on a scale of 1 to 10 for my anathemas is going to be an 11. The intensity for my edicts, maybe one of my edicts is a 3, maybe another one's a 6, maybe another one's a 9.
I don't think I would run my characters that way. You described anathemas as something that makes you throw up. I don't think I'm going to ever describe my anathemas as always something that makes me throw up. I think if your edicts can be 3s, 8s, 9s, and 11s, your anathemas can also be negotiable, completely non-negotiable, fucking kill on sight.
Yeah. See,
You know what I mean?
here's my thing about that, though. And again, this is why I wanted to define our terms in the beginning.
Yeah. Well,
The word anathema, that's oil and water. That's a complete and total separation between thing 1 and thing 2.
Goblins at home. Eric loves definitions.
Yeah.
It's an ED.
Words have meaning.
Words have meanings. Other words have other meanings.
Yeah, but when you look at the examples around here of the various anathemas and then the various edicts, the emotional, gut-wrenching ones tend to be anathemas. They're the ones where like, I can't handle this. This is
Right.
anathema to me. But edicts are sort of like, this is how I try to live my life. These are the things I think that are important to me.
And I feel like, to be fair, like the no's, if you will, can be a lot more specific. It's a lot more.
Okay.
It's a lot easier to make no's specific
Sure.
than yeses, because
If I'm hearing you
oftentimes
right, yeah.
no's or anathema are clearly defined moments,
Mhm.
whereas yeses are often more vague and open ended. And because of that, your no's, because they're more discreet, I guess is a word for it,
Mhm.
they can be more intense. Whereas your open-ended yeses have to have a little bit of play because they may not always fit the situation.
You know, yeah, I'm looking at these examples and listening to you, and I'm just going to read Caden Killian here. If I remember right,
Caden Kaley's one of my favorites.
Was he chaotic good back in the day?
He's chaotic good.
He's chaotic good, right. So his edicts do seem to be general, and his anathema do seem to be specific, or at least more so.
Mhm.
So edict, drink.
It's literally.
It's just
literally
imbibe.
Drink.
Right. It doesn't say like
Period. It doesn't say
stick to
alcohol.
vodka.
It
It doesn't say alcohol
at all.
It just says drink.
Drink.
So the implication is, he's got a flagon.
Yeah.
You put spirits in it, whatever. But his edict is waste alcohol.
Mm.
So like the destruction of alcohol, the non-consumption of alcohol when you could have consumed it.
Mhm.
Consumed it. These are specific things. Drink feels a little general for me.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely.
Aid the oppressed. Trolley problems.
Mhm.
We're back to that again. You can aid the oppressed in some really shitty ways. I'm just gonna murder all of the slave owners. Just kill them. They all go to the guillotine.
Yeah.
I aided the oppressed, right?
Absolutely.
I'm also a shitty human being who used murder to solve that
Hashtag
problem.
eat the rich.
But yeah. But anathema, be mean or standoffish while drunk. That's kind of specific. So I think you're onto something with the specificity of the anathema.
Drunk, basically.
Yeah. You know, it's kind of like I went to college with all of these anathemas.
Yeah, I did too.
I went to college with all these anathemas when they were pretending to be edicts.
I can totally see a fraternity having like these anathemas written on like a board
In Latin or something.
in Latin
Yeah.
above their kitchen or something like that. What's the third one?
Yeah. Veritas, do not be a dickus. Pledge to us. The third anathema?
Third anathema, yeah.
Oppress the vulnerable.
Oppress the vulnerable.
Yeah.
All right. So the rules here are: don't waste booze, don't be a dick
Mm-hmm.
while you're drunk, and don't pick on the nerds.
Right.
All right, guys. Now go out there and have fun. Like that's a literal frat house anathema board on top of the
And
kitchen.
if you build like 5 different NPCs or player characters or monsters that all live and interact with and respect the areas of Caden Killian, that's just his edicts and anathemas. Yours can start there and get more specific from there.
Absolutely.
In the spirit of what you just heard, I am now this. And you can be a few degrees of separation from this. And again, we're back in alignment territory using that kind of language. But all 20 of these deities we have here, starting on page 35 of the Player Core book, they're an amazing place to start. You have 20 sets of edicts, 20 sets of anathemas, plural. And then you can mix and match them to do your own thing.
So
or you can just stay in the lane that these guys are in.
So let's talk about clerics and champions and other classes
Those with mechanical
that have mechanical requirements for E&As. Because what's interesting is you can randomly roll a cleric and then staple on the edicts and anathemas on top of whatever you just rolled. And that may or may not create an incredibly interesting and contradictory human. You know what I mean? I abhor the destruction of the undead, but my God asks me to do it.
Right.
What is like that is a book that just wrote itself.
Totally.
You know what I mean?
You just lean so hard on the first 2 edicts and you try to hope that nobody's noticing that you're not abiding by the third one.
Exactly. And then your God punishes you literally.
Yeah, that was the first 2 years of my college career right there. You're amazing how far you can get by
So like randomly roll your E&As and then randomly roll for a god.
Yeah.
And see what comes out.
Yeah, it's certainly an interesting exercise. And when you get 4 or 5 players around the table and they have their edicts and anathemas and they put some degree of thought into them, it doesn't matter how complex they are. If they're stupid simple, like, don't eat meat. That's my anathema or my edict. That's fine. Something stupid simple like that.
Or eat meat would be an anathema.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or only eat meat that you have hunted.
Yeah.
It's like, it's really simple and it specifies your character in a way that your other characters I'm also playing with in other games are not behaving, even though they share the same chaotic good alignment. So that's amazing. I love that. What I'd like to turn to is how can we use edicts and anathemas, E&As, to create monsters, to create NPCs. Like, did I just hijack your conversation you were having?
Nope.
You wanted to talk about clerics and divine inspired people who have edicts and anathemas.
Yeah,
did we finish that?
I kind of wanted.
No,
we kind of skipped over it.
Okay.
But
I guess I don't have a ton to say.
Yeah,
about
there's
that.
kind of the problem is we don't have champion yet.
We don't have champion yet, right?
Because the book hasn't come out yet.
Yeah, Oracle, something else.
Oracles don't. They're not.
They're their own thing.
They're not just sorcerer or clerics anymore.
Clerics have to stay in their lane.
Yeah.
I guess that's the easy way to describe edicts and
I
anathemas
think champions do too in many ways. My point though was that you can have a god whose edicts and anathemas aren't necessarily in line with your edicts and anathemas.
There it is.
It's fun.
You just can't break theirs.
You can't break theirs.
Right.
Or you can, and you have to ask for forgiveness.
Sure. Yeah. You pay the price and do the recompense.
In my opinion, those are like the interesting stories that we need to tell.
Yeah.
Like,
divine stories.
Like if you're playing a divine character, trolley car that motherfucker. Okay. All right.
I want that on a shirt with a goblin face.
Trolley car that motherfucker. So let's take this a step back. You've got a divine character at your table. Fucking, they've got edicts and anathemas that their god tells them to do.
And everybody else knows it.
Trolley car them.
Yeah.
If they're up for it.
As a GM or as another player?
As a GM.
Oh, yeah.
Trolley car them. Yep. Give them 2 options that both, they have to pick one, and both of them will kind of force them to go against their edicts and anathemas.
That's really cool because that creates a moment in a player's experience where they have to realize what's actually more important for their character.
And they have to know what's at stake.
It creates stakes, where before it was just sort of like, this is just on my character sheet and I do things. Yeah, but you don't do them with any understanding of the cost if you went the other direction. Now you have to go the other direction, so put your money where your mouth is, motherfucker, and take your action.
We need a steak emoji.
A steak emoji?
On the Discord. Wouldn't that be amazing?
I forgot about that.
When I did the steaks.
The steak.
We need to do steak.
Yeah,
we're gonna have a steak emoji on the Discord for sure.
Okay. All right.
But yeah, I think trolley carring your clerics and your champions, or just a player whose whole kind of spiel is that they care about their god and they're religious. Trolley carring them allows you to create these dynamic moments between the character and their faith.
Yeah.
It gives them a crisis of faith in many circumstances. And some of the greatest movies ever made, some of the greatest stories ever made are stories about a crisis of faith.
Well, yeah, the Christ story is exactly that.
Oh yeah.
The Garden of Gethsemane is him having that issue.
Yeah. So, if it's good enough for the Bible, it's probably good enough story beat for your game at home. So I guess what I'm trying to say is,
I don't know if this is going to get a lot of cheers or a lot of hate.
Whatever. Yeah, my drink's done, so I don't care. But no, seriously, like give your religious players
catch up
stuff to chew on, and you're going to be blessed with a lot of really interesting and fun, role play to come.
Right. Yeah. And again, make sure you get the buy-in from your player. I was about to say,
warning label, make sure that they're down for it. Because if they're not down to clown and they just want to play Iamity Paladin, I'm the good guy fighting the bad guys.
Yeah.
That's a session zero question you got to have.
A lot of very religiously conservative people over the years. Yeah. And there are places I just don't go.
Yeah, sure.
Even if that's where my character would, I don't as a player because, again, don't be a dick.
Yeah, absolutely. Know your table. Read your table.
So, okay, cool.
You wanted, we're good.
I wanted to go somewhere else with this
Yeah,
because I'm worried that people might tune out and say, oh, edicts and anathemas are optional. Fine, I just won't do it because I already have so much overhead in this game. But I think E&As can be as complex or as simple as you want it to be. So I'm just going to throw out a couple of examples here. If I have a an abomination character like a Shoggoth, a monster, I can have the edict be as simple as consume sentient beings. That's the edict. It's one. I don't need three, and I don't need to have a whole backstory. Just like eat things that are alive, you know, not carrots, but the people who grow carrots. Eat those guys. You can have a simple anathema be, it's the edict, but opposite. So in this case, maybe my monster has the edict, consume sentient beings, and the anathema can be something stupid simple as fail to consume a sentient human being when you have the opportunity.
Right.
You know, don't leave food on the table. It's irresponsible. Mama Shoggoth told you to finish your plate.
Mama Shoggoth.
That's going to be a character.
It's got to be.
Okay. Cool.
It's got to be.
And the examples we've been using up till now were just sort of like, edict, and anathema, and they may or may not cross over, and I have to come up with 4 concepts that are individual, and that seems like a lot of overhead. I don't want.
Yeah.
One is all you need. One edict, one anathema, and it can be one is the opposite of other. It doesn't get simpler than that.
One is
unless
better
you don't
than
use it at all.
One is better than 0.
One is better than 0. Yeah, and even if you had 0, you get to do that unless you're a cleric or a champion or some divinely and sourced power person. Contract devil, edict, negotiate contracts to the signee's greatest advantage and punish breaches without mercy. Anathema, fail to pet a puppy when one is presented.
I love how you just...
There's no irony here.
There's no irony.
It turns my stomach when I have a puppy out there and I have the opportunity to get friendly with it and I don't. It affects me a little bit. And that's a me thing. That's not moral or ethical.
Yeah.
That's my personal code. So this contract devil, it doesn't need to be anathema.
Always
fail to set orphanages on fire. It doesn't have to be edgelordy.
Yeah.
Anathemas don't need to be edgelordy. They just need to be like a visceral reaction you had to something that like affects you on a level where you're like, sorry, I can't do this. That's a line I can't cross.
Always pet a cat if given the opportunity.
Yeah. That's an edict to live by. Or you can just be stupid complicated and have 15 paragraphs to each individual edict if you want, if that's your game.
Yeah.
So it's not like a one size fits all, which is what alignment tried to be. So when I say alignment is opaque, alignment is non-specific, alignment is a hammer you're using to solve every problem that requires a tool. But edicts and anathemas, they're targeted, they're specific. They're not general. And they can be used to target very specific story types and character behaviors. And they can differentiate your play from character to character to character. And they give your GM food to consume and build your world with.
Building on the idea of the other players at the table, I think it's also important to remember that edicts and anathemas can mainly inform the other players about what your character will and will not do.
Yeah. Were you picturing it all like a little plaque, you know, hi, my name is Erik, only it's edicts and anathemas in front of you at the table?
I'm literally like, while you were talking, I was thinking to myself, what are the edicts and anathemas of Dragrid? What are his edicts and what does he have any?
Yes. I'm going to argue that one of Dragrid's edict has to be
let's do it right now.
Allow non-factual information to go uncorrected.
His edict?
He's a mansplainer. Yeah.
That's his edict?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
or an anathema.
Okay. Let me rephrase that and say the same thing.
Yeah.
Accuracy is sacred to him.
Accuracy over brevity.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. If somebody is saying an inaccurate thing, he's compelled to correct it. It's something he aspires to. It's something that's personal to him. It's something he has no control over because, you know, he's on the spectrum. It's just a part of how he's wired.
There is exactness in the world.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's not a flaw. That's just it's what makes the world right to him.
Yeah. It's the only way, if things aren't that way, the world crumbles.
There's probably a better way to phrase it, but there's something about the accuracy of information that's out here in the world. No, that's not right. Let me tell you what's right.
And what I love about it is it bleeds so well into the wizard side of him.
Sure.
So it's like the wizard side of him is almost a representation of that edict.
Mhm.
rather than his class being a representation of the edict itself.
Yeah, and you built that as a character personality quirk, if you want to call it that, before E&As were even a thing.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
this is all intuitive. We know this stuff. We knew this stuff 40 years ago when we were playing D&D and whatever game we're playing.
What's another
But it's been
edict
codified now.
for
For
Dragrid?
Dragrid? Oh, God. Learn all of the professions because I can't pick one and stick with it.
I'm not writing that down.
I'm an alchemist. I'm an investigator. No, I'm a wizard.
Okay, Eric. It's not my fault that both the alchemist and the investigator are garbage.
Yeah.
I'm sorry if you
I'd have
designed
to-
that game. I'm sorry if you were the one who designed that class, those classes, and I just insulted you. But
No buts.
do better
you
next
have your
time.
opinions. It's okay. It's okay. And they are because it's coming. One of the reasons why they bumped the alchemist to player core 2
yeah,
is because they had things they're trying to address. So kudos.
Mhm.
I'd have to think on it. As far as anathemas for Dragrid, I don't even know. I think that's one of the reasons why it's so hard for me to build stories around Dragrid.
okay.
Is because I don't understand where his lines are.
This is a really good piece of advice then for our players, which is your anathemas more than your edicts. I would argue allow your DM to build scenes around you.
Yes.
So
Oh yeah.
you like if I give you a line in the sand that I will not cross,
Mhm.
that's a lot easier to design a scene around
Mhm.
than a general quirk about myself.
Sure. Yeah.
Right.
Edicts are the carrot. Anathemas are the stick.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Except I hate that saying, but
Yeah.
yes, absolutely. Because originally the saying is it's a carrot on a stick, which means it's a stick with a
Mhm.
carrot at the end.
Mhm.
It's not a stick hitting the back of the donkey and a carrot in front.
Right.
The saying is it's a carrot on a stick,
Mhm.
meaning there's a stick and a carrot dangling from in front of it. There is no pain in the original thought experiment of this saying. There is no negative reinforcement. There's only positive reinforcement. I had to say it. There's the E. There's my accuracy over brevity. Dragrid's coming
It's
out.
okay, Dragrid. You can calm down, Dragrid.
Dragrid's coming out. All right.
Your edicts have come through. I was gonna go somewhere too. You juggled something else in my brain or shook it loose, and now it's lodged back.
That's
up
the
in there
alcohol
again, so
talking, I think.
I gotta find it.
I think at this point we've probably we've rounded a lot of
I think
corners.
so. Can we do a summary or a TLDR?
Yeah.
All right,
You got one on the tip of your tongue. I can see it.
So in the briefest words you can summon, how did you feel alignment was valuable?
Mhm.
And what about E&As made it so you didn't need to use alignment anymore?
Alignment was useful because it gave me a general heading. If you think of a compass, I'm sailing the seas and I want to head in a specific direction. Sorry, I want to head in a direction, not a specific one.
Like a moral or
a
ethical compass.
direction. If I take that compass and put it in 3D,
Mhm.
I can literally go in one of these 8 directions. I can go north. I can go southeast.
Okay.
I can go southwest. I can go northwest.
Sure.
So it was a really easy shorthand for me I had this vague concept in my mind about who I wanted to make as a character. And I almost immediately know what their alignment is because it's so opaque and vague.
Mhm.
And I could write that down as a heading to head towards. Anathemas are useful. E&As are useful. And edicts and anathemas are useful because they allow me to create specific tripping points, anathema,
Mhm.
to hand to my DM and to hand to myself in role-playing scenarios. And it gives me edicts, which allow me to create the world the character wants to see. So my edicts as a human being, as Robert, give me direction in a very similar way that the alignment did originally.
Mhm.
Give me I had a very general direction with the alignment. The edicts give me a far more specific direction and heading to follow,
Okay.
27 degrees north by northwest. And, 30 degrees south by northwest or whatever, however those things work.
Okay, we're about an hour, 20 minutes in, and I want to do one more thing, and then I'm ready to shut my fat mouth. I would like to have a useful example for people to watch,
Mhm.
because we've been talking a lot, and we've been talking around things and through things and over things and under
Sure.
things, and it feels like a messy discussion to have. And picture's worth 1,000 words. An example is worth 1,000 words.
Sure.
Let's use my character for your Kingmaker game. And then maybe we can craft something resembling an anathema and see if it feels right to both of us.
Sure. Yeah.
All right. So my character is a fighter druid. He's a war guy. He's a martial guy. He doesn't think awesomely, but he knows when he's being fooled. And he's the guy you want to guard your wagon as it goes from north to south. He's not the guy you want to plan the map trip south. Okay. So that's him. He's a guy who lost every member of his immediate family. His wife ran out on him because she couldn't handle the trauma of them losing 3 of their children. His son was kidnapped by bandits 10 years ago. His 2 daughters were killed by plague that swept through the region 5 years before that. So, anathema. Which of these 3 anathema sounds like they're too specific or exactly what you want as my GM? From general to specific. So would an anathema for my character be kidnapping? Like allowing a kidnapping to take place when I could have prevented it. So that's one possible anathema. Allow the kidnapping of a boy to take place when I could have prevented it. Allow a 1-week period where I don't try to prevent a kidnapping from taking place. So like a week goes by and I haven't gone to my local police department to say, hey, show me your missing children's list. I want to help out. That's 3 different levels of specificity for the same issue my character's facing.
I think the first one would probably be most useful as me as a DM.
Okay.
When you say kidnapping,
so you like it more general.
When I hear kidnapping of a boy, my immediate mind came up like, what if it's the other gender? Like what if it's kidnapping? Yeah, right. You know. And then we got to the 3rd one. It was so specific for some reason, because it got so specific in that instance. It made me almost think it's better as an anathema, or sorry, as an edict.
Okay.
Because it's something so specific that it makes you go out and do something. Here's
sometimes when you think you're writing an anathema, you're actually writing your way towards an edict.
Exactly. So
that's interesting.
The way I was thinking about it was, anathemas are lines in the sand you will not cross. Oftentimes, edicts are things that get you to go out into the world and do things.
Right. And they are lines that
they
you
empower
try not to
you,
cross.
or they are virtues that you're trying to follow, aspirational virtues that you're trying to follow. And the actions you take in your life are leading towards those edicts and trying not to cross over anathemas.
Sure.
Yeah. So I would say in my instance, the kidnapping would be the most useful as a GM because it's broad enough for me to create scenes around, but specific enough for me to understand the differences.
That is my character, not anybody else's at the table.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, that's interesting. Funny enough, the most valuable thing I got out of all of that was the bit about sometimes when you're writing an anathema, you're actually writing an edict.
It's true. Because you can often rewrite, like read me an edict real quick.
Edict. Let's do somebody we haven't done yet.
Yeah.
We're going to go with Jean Couthon.
Hell yeah, one of my favorites.
Bring pain to the world and mutilate your body.
And that's an edict?
Those are both edicts.
Okay, bring pain to the world.
This is the god of like Hellraiser movies, that sort of thing.
The god of Hellraiser movies is actually so fucking specific, but accurate. An anathema would be...
create permanent or long-lasting sources of light and provide comfort to those who suffer. Those are both anathemas.
So in some ways, actually, provide comfort to those who suffer and bring pain to the world. Those are saying the same thing. And I would argue that the edict... Actually, now that I think about it, the anathema isn't necessary in many ways.
I think the light is literal light in this case.
No, I'm talking about the other one. The don't like give people succor, basically.
Provide comfort to those who suffer.
Yeah. Right. That's almost not needed in many ways. But because edicts are almost like lines in sand, it's easier for a player to act on that anathema than it would be to like bring meanness to the world and be a jerk. You know what I mean? The edict is less actionable than the anathema in this instance, simply because, if there's anyone who's having a bad time, my God says don't do that.
Yeah,
it's easier to follow an action upon the don'ts than it is.
I think so
do's.
as well. And I'm going to circle back to my original argument. Anathemas make you want to throw up. So, for instance, if I have an edict of bringing pain to the world and I fail to do it, well, shit. I wasn't at my best, but I'm going to try again.
You had a bad day. You're taking one down.
I'm going to do better next time.
Exactly.
If my edict is mutilate my body and I don't get my cock pierced 87 times, and I'm like, I'm a bad Kuthanite. I'm going to do better next time.
Yeah.
On the other hand, if I bring comfort to those who suffer and I'm a Kuthanite, oh man, that's anathema. That feels... I don't feel right as a person right now because that affects me so much more.
And knowing a Kuthanite, you might get off on it.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
I got to sit with that for a minute because that's true
that
in this specific case.
Yeah, that might be the one place where this whole thing gets thrown topsy-turvy.
See, and that's kind of cool. I know there's not a ton of writers out here, and D&D isn't always about, Pathfinder isn't always about crafting the story the way I like to make it sound. But this exercise we're doing right here is really getting to the heart of the character.
Yeah.
Or getting to the heart of the organization, the religious institution, the butcher shop.
Is there any stories, like any adventure paths written for Zon-Kuthon specifically?
Cradle of Night was a specific adventure in first edition, but it wasn't like an AP or anything like that.
Oh, gotcha.
No, I don't think so. I think we dip in an idol in Pathfinder Society, a couple of just old ass modules, but nothing concentrated. And I think it's because it would be depressing.
It'd be pretty hard
awful
to write, honestly.
I'm surprised they got the Chilaxian one done twice.
Yeah.
But I don't see Nidal coming.
People just fucking love devils, man.
I think Nidal is going to be the one that gets the axe in this upcoming War of the Immortals because we haven't seen anything. And it just seems like it's so hard to do something with it. And talk about the end of an era if he's gone. I mean, he's been around since before the heavens came down and destroyed everything. So,
the corrupted brother.
Yeah. So all that is to say, E&As are just a wonderful way to cut to the chase. And if you don't want to use it, you don't have to.
But I highly recommend that you do.
Give it a shot.
And at least if you have no interest in it at all, and you're just rocking up to a table, and you just want to fucking roll some dice, you just want to have a good time.
Who doesn't want to roll some dice to have random occurrences?
Randomly determine some E&As. Write them on your character sheet. Maybe don't even tell anyone about them.
Yeah.
But if you ever do want to jump into a social situation when you're bored between combats and your phone died, so you can't scroll Reddit.
Wait a minute, where's this going?
Maybe look at your character sheet and be like, oh, I do have a character with opinions about the world.
Not where I thought you were going.
Nope. I do have a character who has opinions about the world. I can chime in on this.
Sure.
It makes it easier to role play.
Yeah.
And for all of my fellow munchkins out there, we need everything to help us role play better and more because we suck at it.
Yep.
And that's probably the reason why we're not doing it.
So it's good to practice. So if you find yourself at the bus stop or in the produce aisle of your local grocery store,
where is this?
Randomly roll on your Edicts and Anathemas, bring suffering to others in the produce aisle, and just try it. It might not be for you, but you won't
randomly
know
start switching
until
products
you try.
So that the prices don't line up and they're wildly different.
Yeah, that's pure chaos.
And then
that's an individualized chaos.
Watch as people go up to the register and be like, why is my bill so expensive? I know inflation's terrible, but this is ridiculous.
Sure. Or if you're from Caden Kalian's faith, just drink as you're walking through the store.
Dude.
Up and down one aisle and then put the empties on the little belt and pay for them.
It's like a half-drank 40 rolling through the conveyor belt being like, really, dude? And you're like, it's been a rough Tuesday.
Don't stop to use the bathroom. I mean, you have empty bottles you're carrying with you. So be smart. Pretend like you work for Amazon. Pee in the bottles and then get to the next stop.
All right. I think we're done.
Have we gone too far?
I think we've gone too far.
Have I crossed into anathema territory?
I don't want to make fun of the Amazon employees right now. All right, guys. You guys have it hard enough as it is. As always, Goblins, we appreciate your time, hanging out with us, listen to our stupid rants. Keep it weird. Pee in a bottle.
Twice.